AoC Meeting number 26, let's get right into it. First is my topic about balance for Corvus, Jenos, Makoa, and Atlas. So Corvus appears to have landed in a pretty good spot. No one is really complaining about him for the most part. It's mainly small stuff, with the only bigger thing being that his ultimate is too weak. I brought up a few things for him. First was possible ult buffs, increasing the slow or making the slow linger after you exit the ultimate so it still gets value when people instantly use their movement abilities to get out of it. I also brought up making it so you can see when you're marked by Corvus, so you can play around that accordingly. I also brought up how with Corvus's lifesteal card, he gains all the lifesteal the ally gives him, and not only the 25%. So if Victor has his 40% lifesteal card, and the 25% for Corvus, Corvus would receive all of that put together and not only 25% of it. At least that's what's been reported to me. The last thing I talked about is making it so his teleport always has the tracer that tells you where he goes. Currently he only seems to have it half the time. They said that they think Corvus landed pretty well and that he probably needs a little more time for players to fully discover him, but they do agree with buffing his ultimate in some way. The lingering slow is something they want to test out. As for the mark, they do want players to be able to see when they're marked by him. Also, him getting all the lifesteal the target gives him and not only the 25% is a bug that they're gonna look over. As for the tracer thing, they do want it to be visible every time he uses his teleport. It was something that worked perfectly in their dev client, but for some reason it's not working on live. Next is Jenos. So the light years nerf was great since he does have to be in the fight more. The problem is he doesn't really have anything to be in the fight with. His gun is pretty lackluster. So I recommended that they give his base gun some love so it can feel more impactful. Corvus is a character who is normally close to a fight and he has a solid gun to back him up. So why not Jenos too? Corvus is also a lot more fun thanks to his gun, while the only thing fun about Jenos is his ultimate. I also asked again about Luminary and if they've come up with any plans for it. They said that they feel a lot of the frustration from Luminary comes from its consistency. It is an amp on 3 people for a long duration after all. They know that Luminary has been what's driven the character for 2 to 3 years and they're not really happy with that. If they remove it, then they know he will need a variety of buffs to compensate for it. They do think it's worth taking a hardcore look at him later in the year, especially since they did just release Corvus. They're definitely more open to messing with Jenos than they ever have been before. Next is Makoa, so they are looking into getting Makoa some base kit buffs, but my worry is that he'll still be locked into the meta build he's forced into right now. Carapace 5, Barrier Reef 5, and Chronos 3. This allows you to spam barriers like your Torvald 2.0. Most Makoas I've talked to hate being locked into this, especially since they do need Chronos 3 before caught, so for half the game they can't kill anything effectively. If Koa only gets base kit buffs, players would still likely feel forced to run the barrier spam loadout, so I recommended making it so Barrier Reef scales higher so you don't have to run Carapace and Chronos 3, but in return, to balance it out, it'd get an internal cooldown after 2 procs, so you only get 1 reset before it goes on cooldown. What the devs are going to do is honestly better. They're going to focus on attempting to give him more build options by buffing other cards, so more than base kit buffs. And if that doesn't work, then they'll probably do what I said. The only things they said that they're thinking about right now is giving him more damage at a distance and either reducing the cooldown of his hook or increasing the scaling of strong arm. But there are other things they want to consider that are more on the build side. Then there's Atlas. So the Atlas buffs are pretty nice, but most people don't really notice them a whole lot, so I asked if he could get a little more love to his weapon. The most common things I've seen asked for is a less spread or a bit more damage. No more than 50 though, because his gun was pretty nuts back when it did 900. The devs do agree that he needs more buffs, and they will probably look at him for mid-season. He's hard to balance because his utility tools are very powerful. They personally want him to be more focused on controlling the game and less so on damage. They say they have to be careful with how they buff him, but they think his weapon spread is a good place to start looking. Next up is Libra's topic. It's balance for Corvus, Furia, and Tiberius. So right now, Corvus's teleport has to fly its full duration before it can teleport, and Libra was asking if he could teleport before that. They said he does technically have the ability to do that, but it's blocked by a lockout after he throws out the teleport. They did reduce the lockout on PTS, but they feel like this is something they could possibly further reduce. For Furia, Libra talked about making it so Solar Blessing has less of a speed penalty, and instead can stop the beam from moving by pressing the button again. Libra also said that the damage from the beam would have to be reduced or removed to keep it from being used as Exterminate 2.0 though. They said that the reality of the talent is that it's always going to have problems either way. They reduced its base speed because many players were complaining about not being able to react to it and catch it in time, and then the complaint was no longer being able to use it to defend against flanks. They said if they are going to mess with the talent, they probably would want to give players the ability to stop the beam like Libra said, however they do need to talk to the coders to see if this is feasible. If they do mess with the talent, it would be in the long term though, so don't expect anything on it soon. As for Tiberius, Libra asked if they could make it so Combat Trance only does 500 a throw, also reducing the slow on both throwing and taking back the sword to 1.5 seconds so it doesn't add up to 6 anymore. They do think there is room to reduce the slow. As for Combat Trance, his kit is designed around it being his power state, and when active his DPS is still lower than several other characters. His projectiles are big and easy to land, but they're hesitant to do anything to the ability. They think reducing his power in this state will likely tank his effectiveness. Next is Z1 Unknown's topic about balance for Grover, Lian, and Sha Lin. So for Grover, he recommended that when using the root on deployables, it can no longer bounce to enemies. He also recommended making it so Vine will pass through teammates instead of sticking onto them. The last thing was either increasing his crippling throw cooldown or reworking chop down so he doesn't have such a fast cooldown on it. Mainly he wants these nerfs since the root talent is almost always picked over the heal talent, even if you're running Grover as a main support. They think they want to make it so the root bounces to less enemies total, for example limiting the amount of bounces to 2. They're more for reducing the max potential effectiveness of deep roots than its frequency. For Lian, Z1 recommended making it so Lian's heraldry card has a 5-second internal cooldown. He also recommended making it so Eminence's bonus damage was reworked into a flat 200-300 that isn't dependent on distance to make it scale. And that's because, as many of you know, there's this bug in the game that makes it so Lian will randomly not get the bonus from the talent. The devs think it might be worth to do that since the bug has been in the game for a long time and they haven't been able to find a hard fix for it, despite how many times they've attempted to. I don't think they said anything about the heraldry thing. Nothing is listed on the meeting notes about it, and I don't really remember if they said anything. I'm pretty positive they didn't. Makes sense cause Lian has been nerfed many times already. Z1 also brought up making the internal cooldown of Sha Lin's Shimmer card 15 seconds instead of 30. This way it's in line with Cassie's and Io's versions of the card. They do think a quality of life buff like that would be good for him to make him more consistent. They think his new kit has more options, but problems with consistency. Next is Bitey's topic about Torvald balance and some life rip worries. Right now Torvald gets bullied and Bitey thinks giving him better fall off would help him out. The devs do want to look at improving his fall off, but they know he can very easily take over the meta with even the slightest buff, so they do want to be careful with Torvald. As for life rip, Bitey is worried that life rip stacking could become too powerful with the release of Corvus. The devs were glad this was brought up to them because they definitely don't want a life rip meta. They don't want to give a hard answer on life rip right now though, and that's because they want to take a good dive into some of the life rip code first to see exactly how it's working with stacking. Next topic is from Glenn ZA about how kill streaks are currently being displayed on the scoreboard. Sometimes if somebody has a kill streak like 20 or 30, it'll get rid of the 0 and only display the 2 or 3. This is something they think they can look into. They said it's definitely a bug. They want to get to fixing it, but they aren't positive on exactly when they'll be able to. And that's it for the topics. Couch did have a topic about the 2020-2021 plans for Paladins, but as many of you can probably guess, that is secret stuff that can't be publicly talked about yet. As for Yago and Gavinet, they didn't have topics for this meeting. They were there at the meeting but didn't have topics on hand. So yeah, that's it. Like always, if you have any feedback for the devs, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And that's pretty much it guys, I want to thank you all for watching, I very much appreciate it, and I'm gonna see you guys later. Bye.